Today we've got a great revenge story on someone who went out of their way to steal credit for something. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, I turned heirs incompetence into profit. A couple of years ago, I bought my first house. Excited to settle in, the next task was signing up for internet. Little did I know I was about to face one of the most frustrating customer service experiences of my life. Turns out, for all new builds in the area, there's some bizarre system in place that forces you to sign up with a specific provider. Let's call them Air, a company that not only handles internet but also connects you to the grid. Seemed like a good deal, right? Wrong. When I called up Air, they were eager to sign me up. I thought I was in the clear, but about a week later, I received an email telling me my order had been canceled. Turns out this is common practice for them. They couldn't be bothered to file the extra paperwork for new builds. So I called again, and again I was canceled. Going back and forth with them for a month, I was livid. I just wanted internet. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I spotted an offer. When you sign up with Air, you get a free Apple TV box. I figured I had nothing to lose at this point, so I gave it another shot. A few days later, my Apple TV box arrived, and of course, my order was canceled again, but something clicked. If they were going to keep offering free Apple TV boxes, only to cancel my orders, why not turn this broken system to my advantage? Surviving on a mobile hotspot and fed up with their incompetence, I decided to exploit their awful process. I repeatedly signed up with Air using their own loophole to my benefit. By the end of the month, I'd accumulated 10 Apple TV boxes, each worth about 200 euros at the time. At this point, I'd gotten my revenge, but I still had no internet. So I walked into their physical store, half explained the situation to a bewildered employee, and within 2 minutes, the store manager was yelling down the phone to their network center. Miraculously, I had internet set up the very next day. As for the Apple TV boxes, I sold all them for a nice 1,500 euros, turning my frustration into profit. Don't get me wrong, if I were in OP's shoes, I would want the internet the whole time too, and I would be very frustrated that I didn't have that internet. I hate literally anything to do with a monopoly on internet where you literally only have one provider, which in a lot of places in the US, that's all you got, especially in apartment buildings. Cable and internet companies will literally make deals with the owners of the apartment that you can only get internet or cable from a specific company. Only in Japan commented, I did the same sort of thing but not to that level. When you signed up to a store credit card, you got a gift. I had just recently returned from overseas and didn't have any recent credit history, so I was denied. Rinse and repeat, I was a bit when I finally was accepted. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is this friend who couldn't take no as an answer. I had this particular friend who couldn't, for the love of God, take no as an answer. If you try to say no to her, she would complain and insist until you said yes. And if you didn't, she would pout for hours. Earlier this year, she asked if she could visit me at my new place, a 4-hour drive from hers. For context, my flat is around 500 square feet and I have an old cat who's super shy. Problem is, she has 2 young dogs who are energetic as heck. I've seen them in action. I clearly don't want them in my place and near my cat. And I know her boyfriend or her mom can take care of them for a few days whenever she asks. So I just told her, yeah, come anytime. Though I'd prefer if you could come without your dogs. My flat is too small for them to stay a long period of time and I'd rather my cat to be as free as possible in her own home. She got super annoyed and answered with something along the lines, well, never mind, it's too complicated to see you these days. And I knew she was mad, but I was fed up by her behavior at this point. We usually exchanged messages or call each other from time to time to keep in touch and, well, the last few months, she didn't initiate. I sent her a message asking for what's up and stuff. She kept me on read for a few days, unusual for her, and then sent me, oh well, you know, I'm so lucky and happy to have my dogs. I know I can always count on them when I need to. Just that. Petty revenge incoming in my mind. I answered, oh girly pop, I so understand you. I love my cat so much, I'm even thinking about adopting another one. And I finally made this flat my own. I'm pretty good these days. She left me on read again, and I'm living my best life ever since, with my peace and my cat. Yeah, not much of a friend. I'd be kind of grateful to have an experience like this because you know who this person is now. I simply would not be prioritizing that person in my life. And to be fair, I feel like most of my friends that I do have, I will go a long period of time without hearing from them, but we always just pick it right back up like no time has ever gone by, and I know they wouldn't be as petty as that. Reasonable Star 959 commented, "It sounds like she wants to give you the guilt trip silent treatment until you buckle and tell her to go ahead and bring her dogs. If you were to give in, she would gleefully bring them and proceed to make you regret it. That is my prediction. It is your home, your rules, your cat, your space. She is welcome, but not her dogs. I'd almost predict if you told her she could come without the dogs, she would bring them anyway." Our next story is Steal My Online Tutorial. I hope you enjoy the new pics. Years ago, around 15, I was into creating replica movie props. I had created a tutorial for my website on building a movie prop gun using a kit I bought and the base airsoft gun. It was a step-by-step on how to use the kit and incorporate it with the gun, pics on every step, etc. I got a lot of positive feedback for it too. But I discovered when checking my website traffic and stats that another site was leeching my photos, meaning they had code on their website that href'd the images on my site so they didn't have to host them, just point to mine. When I checked it out, I saw that they had copied my entire tutorial and made a post on their website claiming it as their own. No reference back to me or my site. You idiot. So I did what anyone would do. I changed the images. Oh boy, did I change them. In my code, I changed the image names from image1.jpg to image_1.jpg, but changed my code accordingly to point to the new file names. My website looked the same, but then I found some of the craziest and nastiest photos on the web and renamed them image1.jpg, etc. to match what code he had stolen and dropped them in the same folder. So now the thief has a tutorial that talked about making a movie prop, but all the leaked images associated with it was a cornucopia of nightmare fuel, HR complaints, and violations of TOS on many servers. Oh yeah, it was nasty stuff. Now, I just watched. The stolen tutorial was up for about 4 days until it magically disappeared. I think I might even still have screenshots somewhere. Never happen again. Don't steal content. I kind of love hearing this story because it's kind of reminiscent of like the last throes of old school internet. I remember when websites and forums for that matter started finally having awareness about hyperlinking to websites. All of a sudden there would be tons of images all over the internet that would be like, this image was hyperlinked, click here to go to the actual website. And to be fair, most of them that I remember were from a now kind of defunct website called PhotoBucket. Deadbird Gonna Put It On You commented, I once found my entire website copied to a CD and being sold on eBay. So I understand what you went through. I wish I had your recourse. Zausafler commented, I once created a multi-floppy disk program. I am dating myself here. And after trying my demo copy, had the company tell me it wasn't what they wanted and refused to pay. And they gave me back my floppies. I found out a couple of months later that they had copied the floppies, and they were using the program and giving copies away free to their clients. I found out because a couple of my college classmates were working full-time for the company. At one point, I had created a couple of icons of famous cartoon characters, and when I wrote to the copyright owners, they told me I could use it for myself and in my own software, but it was not for distribution. I wrote a nice letter to the agency that represented both of the cartoonists involved explaining the situation. A couple of years later, I ran into one of my old classmates and they told me that the company had been involved in a major copyright scandal. Our next story is Comeuppance for the Chair Kicker. This one is short, but it made me feel like I successfully stood up for myself, and I remember it fondly every so often. When I was a freshman in high school, I had a sophomore in my Spanish class who sat behind me every day. He was an athlete/popular guy, and he always sat next to a pretty sophomore girl. He was constantly trying to impress her, and this often came at my expense. He would mock me and others too, I wasn't exclusive, and try to be a jerk to be cool. The girl ate it up, and so that's just how it went. He sounded like the dumbest jock in the world. He had that stereotypical jock way of speaking that made him seem like a complete idiot but also cool. Anyway, he liked to put his feet on my chair and bounce really hard throughout the entire class. I asked him to stop multiple times and he would just put this dumb face on and say, "What are you gonna do about it, huh?" Dude sounded just like a punch-drunk Rocky. So one day when I'd had enough, he kept bouncing after I asked him to stop. So I snuck some water from my bottle into my hand, and I pretended to violently sneeze into it. Then I hammed it up by looking at my hand in disgust and proceeded to wipe it all over his leg that was still on my chair. He pulled his leg away and went, "Oh," and looked at me like he was amazed that I actually did anything. I thought I was gonna have to fight him after school or something, but nothing happened. He stopped touching my chair and didn't mess with me again. Really made me feel good. Honestly, as stereotypical as OP described this person, I'm surprised OP didn't have to fight them. Or not even necessarily have to fight them, but end up in a fight. I mean, to be fair, on a personal level, one thing that would make me want to very much fight somebody would be somebody wiping their sneeze residue on my leg. That said, I wouldn't have been that bully that put themselves in that situation. Incarnate Devil commented, "Quick lesson on how to deal with a bully. They don't want to fight, they want to intimidate. When you fight back, it presents more of a challenge than they actually want to deal with. As soon as someone tries to intimidate, call it out. In this case, after asking twice, I would stand up in class, turn right around, and lean on the bully's desk and yell, 'Stop kicking my chair! I've asked you multiple times.' This immediately draws attention to the situation and the bully. If the bully continues to do it, respond the same way again. The teacher may move you, but this would stop the bully usually." Our next story is, "Want to make me look bad? Don't dish out what you can't take." This happened a while ago, but I was recently reminded of this and I thought it would fit this subreddit well. I used to work at a well-known retail chain popular for its cheap prices. At the time, this particular store had a massively high turnover rate, especially for the supervisor/keyholder position, which I so happen to hold. I was the most senior supervisor on staff by many months when Ken was hired, and I know this doesn't sound like much, but for the store, I may as well have been there for years. Like all other new hires, I treated Ken with nothing but kindness when he joined our team. He returned that favor by mansplaining my job to me, blaming me for every single fault he found within the store, and using the grading system we used to rate the previous night's clothes to bully me. By that, I mean he would write absolutely no good things about my clothes, offer not a single bit of constructive criticism, and would only do this to me and no other supervisor on staff. So as you can see, Ken and I clashed with each other. The crux of my petty revenge came when he consistently took over my closes. For those of you who have never had the joyous experience of working in a retail setting if you're the cashier, you are on a leash. You are not allowed to be out of eyesight of cash at any point. So for example, if you need to use the washroom, you have to ask permission and get someone to cover you. One of the very few perks of being a supervisor at this job was that you had free reign of the store floor and weren't tethered to a particular spot for hours. On several occasions when I was scheduled to close, my closing cashier called out of their shift and Ken volunteered to fill it. Unfortunately for me, that meant I got demoted to the role of cashier and was tethered to cash largely against my will. Around the fourth or so time of this happening, I stood my ground and said I'd like to complete my close. And instead of being courteous, he ran to call the manager and was given my close instead. After that situation happened, and on top of his condescending behavior, I decided I would get back at Ken. When he took over my closes and when he wasn't looking, I would go through the store and mess things up that he had faced, put things where they didn't belong, and generally make the store worse. This was especially fun when I was the opening manager the following morning, and I got to write up his closes as being bad. And for those who were wondering, the reason I did not quit over this, and believe me, I contemplated many times over my duration of working with him, I stuck it out because I was too stubborn to let him have his way and let a man push me out of my job. He ultimately quit for unrelated reasons, and I was pretty sure my birthday came early the day that he did. This was either the only kind of job Ken could possibly qualify to get, or they had no real intention or will to be there a long period of time anyways and they were acting out to begin with. Delulu for Drama commented, "He can mansplain to himself why no one likes him." This next story is, my coworker has it out for me, so my revenge was to do her a favor. I wanted to tell my story of potentially the least effective or potentially most effective petty revenge I performed. I'm a 29-year-old female bartender working at a small but very popular pub. I've worked there for over 3 years and have worked my way up to the shifts I want, so I often work 5 to 6 days a week. I worked 6 days straight closing the bar, which is a lot because unless it's Friday or Saturday I work alone, and we have to clean the entire place. Sweep, mop, clean the toilets, etc. It's busy and I can sell anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000 a night. One time $3,700 with a busser, but other than that always alone, no help. Server, bartender, host, food runner. Anyways, I close that final night, I do the entire checklist as usual and leave the place clean as I always do. The next day, the opener sent out a message around 1 p.m. that said, there was a full case of the Pinot upstairs, 1.5 bottle in the fridge. I have a bottle on ice for a couple that specifically came in for the Pinot. If we're super low stock, have a quick gander upstairs. This employee gets 1 shift a week. She has proven to not be the strongest and completely has it out for me. Stocking the wine is a day shift job. When she got there at 11:30 a.m., she could have taken a gander in the fridge and stocked accordingly. So here is the petty revenge? I question whether this is actually revenge or just satisfying to me. So if I close and know she's opening, I'll put the chairs up, and we don't put the chairs up. But even though putting the chairs up is annoying as heck, if she's gonna complain about my clothes, then I better do a thorough job. When we worked the next time together, she acted like I didn't exist. Like I wasn't there? I didn't do anything. That's what bothered me the most. Then guess who needs a shift covered that weekend? Her, of course. So who took it? Me, of course. I felt satisfied with the fact that as much as she wants to hate me there, I was to help her out. So, is that even petty revenge? You tell me. It's almost like a kill him with kindness, be like a shining example. I don't know if it's necessarily revenge. Maybe you could loosely argue that OP is like doing the best they can and just putting on a shining example. And they're kind of getting revenge loosely in the sense of they appear to be living their best life and just doing great. And for your enemies, that's just upsetting. Mappeline commented, I read somewhere that interactions work as if each of us lived in a pool full of water and nobody can really get to other people's pools. It's up to us to keep the water clean or to pollute it. If we pee and say it's somebody else's fault, we're the ones bathing in pee, not them. She's living in her pool full of her own pee and poo. Our next story is Seat Stealer Gets What She Deserves. So this happened to my cousin 2 months ago. He was flying from Ahmedabad to Kolkata on Indigo Airlines. Since he's tall, I made sure to book him an exit row aisle seat well in advance and even paid extra for it. Fast forward to the day of the flight, he boards, finds his row, and sees someone sitting right in his seat. The entire row is filled, but there's clearly been a seat snatcher situation. Undeterred, he approaches the woman in his seat. Let's call her Karen. Cousin says, "Excuse me, I believe that's my seat." Karen, barely glancing up, said, "No, there's no way. I always book the aisle seat." Cousin replied, "Maybe you're just in the wrong row. Mind checking?" Karen sighs dramatically and says, "Look, this is my seat. Maybe you're mistaken." Cousin firmly replied, "Well, my ticket says this seat. Let's check with the flight attendant, shall we?" My cousin heads to the front of the plane and explains the situation to an attendant. She confirms that the seat is indeed his. But instead of escalating, my cousin decides to play it cool. He returns to Karen with a new idea. I spoke to the attendant. She confirms it's my seat, but since you seem certain, she's offered me a complimentary upgrade to business class. Karen, suddenly interested, said, "Business class? Really?" The cousin replied, "Yeah, though honestly I prefer the legroom in the exit row. Would you want to switch and take an upgrade?" Karen, grinning, said, "Oh, absolutely." I said, "Great, just go to the front, let the attendant know you're taking the business class upgrade meant for the passenger in 13C, and she'll get you all set." Karen hops up immediately, smugly grabs her bag, and struts to the front. My cousin finally takes his rightful seat, and as he chats with the other passengers, they reveal they've been irritated by Karen's antics too. He shows them his boarding pass, confirming he's exactly where he's supposed to be. The twist? This particular Indigo flight didn't even have business class seats. My cousin knew that. So when Karen confidently asked the flight attendant for her upgrade, the attendant just looked at her in total confusion. Realizing something's off, Karen storms back, visibly irritated, and confronts my cousin. "Excuse me, you said there was an upgrade to business class?" Cousin innocently said, "Huh? Are you talking to me?" Karen said, "Obviously. You told me to go up there and ask for a business class seat." Cousin deadpan said, "Why would I do that?" Karen huffing said, "Because I was, sitting in your seat and you said..." Cousin interrupting said, "Why were you in my seat? I clearly have 13C on my boarding pass." He shows it to the attendant, who's followed her back. "Where's yours?" Karen's flustered now, trying to explain herself, but a fellow passenger jumps in. The co-passenger said, "He's not lying. That's his seat, all right." The flight attendant, now visibly exasperated, politely asks Karen to show her boarding pass. Karen rolls her eyes dramatically, muttering under her breath about the incompetence of the airline staff. She makes a big show of digging through her purse, then her carry-on, and even her coat pocket, all the while huffing and sighing loudly as if everyone around her were wasting her precious time. After a few minutes of this performance, she finds her boarding pass but clutches it tightly, refusing to hand it over. She then spins around to face my cousin looking livid. "You! This is all your fault. First you try to steal my seat, and now you embarrassed me in front of the entire plane." The flight attendant says, "Ma'am, please just show me the boarding pass so we can sort this out quickly." Karen, ignoring the attendant, says, "Do you know how much I fly? How often I choose aisle seats because I need them?" She gestures around wildly. "But today I have to deal with some random guy who thinks he can just barge in and claim my seat." Her voice is growing louder and passengers around them are beginning to shift uncomfortably. By now, Karen's frustration is transformed into a full-blown rant, complete with finger-pointing and accusations. She goes after everyone: the airline for hiring incompetent staff, the attendant for not knowing anything, and my cousin, who she calls a liar and a cheat. The flight attendant attempts to calm her down, reminding her that they're causing a delay, but Karen is relentless, her voice escalating with every second that passes. She accuses the airline of disrespecting loyal passengers and shouts that she'll file a complaint so big they'll lose their jobs. By now, nearly 20 minutes have gone by and passengers around her are beginning to sigh and check their watches. Eventually, the captain is informed of the situation and comes over to assess the problem. The captain, firmly but calmly says, "Ma'am, we need you to show your boarding pass right now, or I'm going to have to ask you to leave the plane." Karen is shocked. Her face flushes as she realizes that her show isn't working. She finally hands over the boarding pass to the captain, who glances at it, then looks back at her with a raised eyebrow. The captain says, "Ma'am, this says 22B. Your seat is 9 rows back and it's a middle seat." There's a stunned silence as Karen's face goes pale. She tries one last-ditch excuse. She defensively says, It's so unfair. I'm under a lot of stress and I can't just sit in a middle seat. I need an upgrade for this horrible experience." The captain firmly says, "Ma'am, either go to your assigned seat or you'll need it aboard." Defeated, Karen finally gathers her things, her face burning red with embarrassment as she walks down the aisle toward her actual seat in 22B. Along the way, she keeps muttering curses under her breath, shooting daggers back at my cousin and the flight crew. Meanwhile, my cousin settles back into his rightful seat and the flight finally prepares for takeoff. Edit, wow, this blew up. Let me respond to a few comments. Most of the incident happened in Bengali and Hindi. I translated as best I could, but some things sound unnatural when translated, hence the English may sound unauthentic at times. For example, Karen had her pass inside her blouse. Instead of explaining how Bengali woman keeps stuff inside a blouse, it's easier to say coat. It's a narrative license so everyone can enjoy the story without getting bogged down by cultural perceptions. I wasn't there, yes, but my cousin recorded Karen's rant, hence writing in detail was easy. While I have his permission to write the story, he didn't consent to posting the recording as it has enough to recognize him. If I was on that flight and I was a few rows back where I was feeling a little bit more anonymous, I feel like I might have been a little tempted to duck down where they can't really see me and go, "Kick her off the plane! Deboard her, do it!" Drazzy Lou commented, "She just had to inform the entire plane of her entitlement, making sure everybody knew how obnoxious she was and taking her embarrassment from nose to tail." Our next story is Rude Customer. I worked at a small country store for a while. I was low on cash in my register and I went to the safe to get more. As I walked back, a customer walked to the counter to check out. I literally ran to the front so the guy wouldn't have to wait. All he was buying was a can of Coke. When I got to the register, the man scoffed and made a comment about waiting, laid his payment on the counter and wouldn't say anything. Dude literally waited less than a minute. As I was giving him his change, a loud truck rode by the store and the guy looked out the window. I took the opportunity to give the can of Coke 2 quick shakes and handed it to him. He walked out, got in his car, opened the can and, well, got Coke all over himself and his front seat. Absolutely deserved. This guy was just looking for something to complain about. Although I think if I were in OP's position, I would be like hyper analyzing and being like, were they secretly waiting there the whole time and then just stepped up only when I looked their way? Could it scientifically have been possible that they were ready to check out as soon as I turned around facing away from the cash register? Yeah, I'm a little bit of an overthinker. The idiot Henry commented, "Ha, that is perfect. My friend delivered pizzas when we were in high school and had this one guy who would order pizza every weekend along with 2 huge bottles of soda, was always unnecessarily nasty and would never ever tip. His last day working for that pizza place, friend spent like 2 solid minutes in his car shaking the freak out of both bottles of soda before walking to the customer's front door with his delivery. Only downside is there was no way to stick around and see what happened, but I like to imagine it was a big mess." Our next story is, take my credit, lose your credibility. I work in R&D in my company. I usually don't get involved too much in deals like suppliers and manufacturers. That's a different department. But my team and I have been working on a project that made it more necessary for me to get involved in the finer details of a big manufacturing deal. We're wrapping up the project, and I found out that someone high up in the manufacturing department has been meeting with the other company without me and was going to basically take credit for all my team's work. It isn't a huge deal for me, but it could affect bonuses for some of my employees. So today, I talked to the COO, who told me that they recognized that my team did the work and deserve credit, but that it was going to be easier at this point to just let the other person handle the deal. I was okay with this because we got the credit, but it was a load off my plate and I have other things to do. But then this prick had the nerve to ask where he can take the clients for lunch. He didn't say who, but I knew they were coming to town, so it wasn't hard to figure it out. So I told them about a new restaurant that's opening. It should be a nice place for them after a long flight. The restaurant? Twin Peaks. If you don't know, it's kind of like a Hooters ripoff. After lunch, they came by the office and I made sure to say hi. They were clearly not impressed, and their CTO even made a comment that he wished I was handling things because he didn't like the other guy's style. They were clearly uncomfortable with his choice in restaurant, and he had some glares for me as well. I think OP's just fortunate that it worked out so well in their favor. I mean, Lord knows, maybe taking these clients to the Hooters knockoff would be right up those people's alley. I mean, imagine OP goes to the lengths to make sure that this does happen this way, and they go, "Oh, I love this guy's style. Twin Peaks really rocks." Confused at 63 commented, "I don't like the atmosphere, but their mom's pot roast is absolutely as good as my grandmother's. I don't mind the scantily dressed young ladies or my husband looking, but the music is way too loud. We are boomers, but not stuck up about what we see. Walmart has conditioned us." This next story is, judge my shopping? Well, back of the queue for you. I was shopping for some small bits, lunches, bleach, a nuclear bunker supply of soft drinks for the long winter, also some cat food and dog food, a smidge relevant. I've got 2 bags of shopping, tops, 1 for human consumption. I get to the tills and I'm watching the family ahead load up, listening to Spotify, and a lady appears with 5 or so items. All the other tills are occupied with 1 person queuing. Self-checkout is dystopian free, but yeah, who wants to support a job for a robot and his family? I open my trolley back a bit, thinking, yeah, you can go ahead of little old me with your 5 items, I'm in no rush. I'm about to tell her to go ahead, and she mutters something. I can't hear her, so I take my earbuds out. She goes, "All for you, is it?" and gestures to my cart. "Me, the wife, and the critters," I say, and she rolls her eyes a bit. She looks over at the till, emptying up, and leans forward a bit, trying to skip ahead, so I close it off with my trolley. Don't trolley shame me, lady, whoever you are. Nice gestures are for nice people. She ended up wandering between the queues, wasting more time switching. by the time I finished up. When I do some shopping, I literally don't want to be the fool who ends up doing exactly what this Karen did at the end. I just eyeball what appears to be the shortest line and just commit to it, and I'm just gonna wait. Unless, of course, I find out I'm right behind the Costco guys who are buying $400 worth of groceries. I might take another crack at cash register roulette and hope I get behind another person that isn't quite so stocked up. Flight of Elpenor commented, I try to avoid criticizing people who are doing me a favor, but that's not a life rule for everyone. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.